What is up, everybody? It's Animac here for AnimeUproar, and today I will be breaking down some of the strongest quirks in My Hero Academia. I will be examining their unique powers, their strengths, their weaknesses, and their potential. Just to be clear, this is not an exhaustive list or a countdown. This is an analysis of what I believe to be some of the strongest and most overpowered quirks in Boku no Hero. Having said that, if there are other OP quirks that you would like to see me cover in a future video, just leave a like, subscribe, and write your suggestions down in the comments. If we can hit 4,000 likes on this video, I will make a part 2 that features your suggested quirks. You can also hit me up on Twitter and or Instagram at AnimeUproar with your suggestions. Finally, this video will contain Boku no Hero manga spoilers. I will be using all of the latest information that we have about the quirks that I will be mentioning, so please proceed with caution. You have been warned. First up, let's talk about one of the most important quirks in the entire story, the quirk used by the legendary symbol of peace All Might, and the quirk currently being used by the main character of the story, Izuku Midoriya, aka Deku. I'm of course talking about the epic quirk Pop-Off, I mean One for All. One for All is a unique transferable quirk that was possessed by 7 other people in the past before being possessed by All Might, the 8th user, and then eventually Deku, the 9th and current user. As we eventually learn, One for All is not a naturally occurring quirk. Rather, it is an accidental fusion of 2 previously separate quirks. A quirk that stockpiles power, and a quirk that allows quirks to be willingly transferred from one person to another. The stockpiling side of One for All gives its user superhuman strength, reflexes, stamina, agility, and speed. As we learned from All Might after he transferred One for All to Deku, once the quirk is transferred from one person to another, the one who transfers it can still make use of some leftover embers of the quirk, although these embers will eventually run out. The stockpiled power that the user of One for All has access to can be channeled into a particular part of the body or spread out throughout the whole body. Focusing more power into one body part, such as an arm or a leg, will put more strain on that part of the body in particular. This body strain is especially severe at first, before the user learns to control the power of the quirk. And as we saw with Deku, using the quirk without experience can lead to broken fingers, arms, and legs. But eventually, once the user learns to control the quirk, he or she can learn to control the percentage of the quirk's power that they are using at any given time, which helps to minimize the strain. One for All has an inner core that has gotten increasingly stronger as the quirk has been passed on from one user to another, which makes sense for a stockpiling quirk. However, as the story goes on, we eventually learn that as One for All is being passed on from one person to another, the quirk factor of each user merges with the core of the quirk. This unusual process has been repeating for many generations, and now Deku, the 9th One for All user, is slowly gaining the ability to manifest the quirks of the previous One for All users. What's more, these quirks have been amplified by One for All's stockpiling power, which means that Deku will eventually have access to 6 new quirks, and these quirks will be even stronger than they were back when they were possessed by their original users. So far, Deku has been able to reliably manifest one of the 6 quirks, and that quirk is called Black Whip. This quirk allows its user to generate powerful black whips from his body, and these whips can be used to grab things and people, and also to maneuver around more easily. Deku wasn't able to use the whips effectively at first, and he needed to practice and train before he could make effective use of this new quirk. According to All Might and Gran Torino, the next quirk that Deku is going to be manifesting is Float, the quirk that was possessed by All Might's former master, Nana Shimura. This quirk allowed Nana to essentially float through the air and potentially even fly at will. Although we're not yet sure how exactly the quirk works since we still haven't seen it in action. The true workings of One for All have been a major mystery throughout the story, and although we have gotten a lot more information about it as the story has continued to develop, it is likely that there are even more mysteries that One for All is hiding. We all remember how Deku was able to break through Shinso's mind control thanks to the unique properties of One For All, and who knows what other secret One For All may still be hiding. By its very nature, One For All is a quirk that continues to get stronger as time goes on, and it also gets stronger as it is passed on from one user to the next. So initially, One For All was not one of the strongest quirks in the world, and it was certainly not stronger than All For One. But One For All did have one advantage over All For One. One For All can only be transferred from one user to another willingly. It cannot be stolen against the user's will. And this makes it impossible for All For One to forcibly take it. And as One For All has been passed on from generation to generation, it eventually became just as strong and arguably even stronger than All For One. All Might, the 8th user of One For All, was able to become the #1 pro hero because of the power of the quirk, and he was eventually able to defeat All For One on 2 separate occasions. And of course we see that Deku, even as a student who is still learning to master One For All, is able to defeat much more experienced villains like Muscular and Gentle on his own, all thanks to One For All. So overall, One For All is without a doubt one of the strongest quirks in Boku no Hero. The feats we've seen accomplished by both All Might and Deku through the use of One For All demonstrate how strong this quirk truly is. And the fact that the quirk is continuing to grow and evolve means that we can expect it to just keep getting stronger and stronger. Especially now that the current user Deku is going to manifest up to 6 other useful quirks on top of One For All. To be fair, One For All definitely has some drawbacks, such as the fact that until the quirk is mastered, it will cause serious damage to the user's body. But both All Might and Deku have proven that with rigorous training, the drawbacks of the quirk can be mitigated. Next up, let's talk about the polar opposite of One For All, the sinister, quirk-stealing All For One. All For One allows its user to steal the quirks of others and then use those quirks himself. And this includes combining multiple quirks inside one person to create extremely effective offensive and defensive quirk combinations. Just think about some of the strongest and most OP quirks out there, and then think about being able to steal those quirks and combine them all in one person. Alternatively, the user of All For One can steal a quirk from one person and then transfer that quirk to another person rather than keep it himself. The user of All For One can combine multiple stolen quirks in order to create more powerful super quirks that would never have occurred naturally. And even One For All itself was actually created by All For One through the fusing of a powerful stockpiling quirk and All For One's brother's quirk transferring quirk. Back in chapter 90, we learned that All For One can even forcibly activate the quirks of others as he manually activates Kurogiri's quirk Warp Gate in order to evacuate Shigaraki and the others before they can be arrested. This could be the result of some other quirk that All For One had stolen. But of course, even if this is just the result of a stolen quirk, it still speaks to the undeniable power of All For One and its quirk stealing ability. Finally, All For One's ability to transfer stolen quirks onto other people means that the user can essentially create his own army of villains with superpowered combo quirks. All For One is able to use his quirk transferring ability to create the powerful super soldiers known as the Nomu, and in the future he intends to make already powerful major villains like Shigaraki even more powerful by giving him additional quirks. Some believe that All For One is planning to transfer the quirk All For One itself to Shigaraki, although we are not yet sure whether this is even possible. Personally, I believe that in terms of pure potential, All For One might be the single strongest quirk in Boku no Hero. Just imagine the incredible potential of being able to steal the quirks of others, combine them to create even more powerful super quirks that would never have occurred naturally, and also being able to create an army of super soldiers by giving them stolen quirks that they could never have gotten otherwise. As long as you're willing to act like a villain and steal the quirks of others, the power you could potentially attain with All For One is truly immeasurable. But with that said, All For One does have some significant weaknesses. One of them is the quirk One For All, which cannot be stolen by All For One, and which was already used to defeat All For One himself on 2 separate occasions. In both of those cases, One For All has been wielded by All Might, and so All Might has been able to decisively prove that All For One is not unstoppable. And as I mentioned earlier, one weakness of All for One is the fact that you have to be kind of immoral and willing to become a villain in order to use it. Stealing the quirks of others against their will and conducting human experiments is not exactly what a protagonist would do. If I had to make my choice right now, I would say that while All for One seems to have more overall potential in terms of being able to combine different superpowered quirks and being able to create an army of super soldiers, in practice, One for All has proven to be stronger at this point in time than All for One. This was not always the case, and All for One was able to kill multiple One for All users in the past. But as of the 8th user, All Might, One for All seems to have stockpiled enough power to be able to defeat All for One, and we've seen it happen 2 times so far. And while we're talking about the strongest quirks in Boku no Hero, we cannot forget about a little quirk called Overhaul. This insanely overpowered quirk allows its user to disintegrate anything he touches, as long as he touches it with at least one finger. He can kill someone instantly by simply touching them, but the really crazy thing about this quirk is that if he chooses to reassemble someone right after disintegrating them, the user of Overhaul can actually bring that person back to life. And he has done this before with people like Rappa. The user of this quirk can control how much of someone's body is actually disintegrated, and if he chooses not to kill someone but merely break down parts of their body, he can then reassemble those parts and all of their past injuries and illnesses within the body will have been cured. Imagine all the good that this quirk could do if it wasn't wielded by a sociopathic villain. To make things even more interesting, Overhaul can also be used on inorganic materials such as walls and the ground, allowing the user to potentially disassemble and then reassemble the entire battlefield in order to gain an advantage over his opponent. And on top of all of that, if he disassembles parts of his own body at the same time as parts of someone else's body, the user of Overhaul can reassemble them in a way that essentially fuses the 2 people together, creating a fused and more powerful version of himself. We can see this ability on full display during Chisaki's fight against Deku and Eri. Chisaki, the user of Overhaul, is able to fuse with 2 of his underlings on 2 separate occasions, and we can presume that while he is fused with another individual, the user of Overhaul can make use of that other person's quirk on top of his own. The quirk Overhaul does have some weaknesses, but they are relatively minor when compared to the quirk's overall power. Using Overhaul seems to take a physical toll on the user. Kai Chisaki develops a rash and itching as a result of using the quirk, but I'm not sure how much of this is related to the quirk itself and how much of it is psychosomatic, since we know that Chisaki suffers from severe germophobia. But even with these minor drawbacks in mind, Overhaul's ability to destroy and put back together inorganic objects, human bodies, and even the user's own body definitely make this quirk one of the strongest in Boku no Hero. Obviously, I'm talking about the quirk when it was at the peak of its power, because Chisaki's ability to use the quirk is severely compromised after Shigaraki gets his revenge on the young Yakuza leader. All in all, I would argue that at the peak of its power and when used properly, Overhaul as a quirk could go toe-to-toe with both All for One and One for All. This is especially the case if the user of Overhaul is able to make effective use of the fusing ability. If the user is able to fuse with someone else who is extremely powerful, or if they are able to potentially fuse with more than one person, the user of Overhaul would have a very good chance of defeating the most experienced users of One for All and All for One at their prime. It's hard to say with 100% certainty who would win because a lot of it would depend on the specific circumstances on the battlefield and so on. But as much as I think that both All for One and One for All are extremely overpowered, I would not bet against Overhaul. The only key advantage that All for One might have over Overhaul is the ability to potentially steal Overhaul itself away from its user. Something that the user of One for All doesn't have to worry about since that quirk has to be given away willingly. But again, whether All for One would even get a chance to steal Overhaul before Overhaul's user turns the entire battlefield into a death trap is something worth considering. And while we can definitely acknowledge that Deku was able to defeat Overhaul, Deku had the help of Eri and her incredible overpowered quirk Rewind. Left to his own devices and without Eri's help, it is extremely likely that Deku would have been destroyed by Overhaul. Now, let me know what you guys think. Do you agree that One for All for One, and Overhaul are 3 of the strongest quirks in Boku no Hero? And which of these 3 quirks do you think is the strongest and why? Which of them would you want to have if you could have any quirk? Also, what other quirks would you like to see me cover in a future video? If we can get 4,000 likes on this video, I will make a part 2 based on your suggestions. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, and you happen to be new to the channel or you still haven't subscribed, please subscribe and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications. You really have to go through the trouble of clicking the bell and selecting the option that says all, otherwise YouTube's gonna bury our videos. It's just the way it goes. You can also hit me up on Twitter and Instagram at AnimeUproar. I want to give a big thank you to all of our AnimeUproar patrons for supporting our work and making these videos possible. With all the constant problems on YouTube, patron support is more important than ever. Thank you guys so much. First and foremost, a special thank you to our The One tier patrons, the ones who rise above all other clans, including Ingrata, Alolanatum, The World, Steelers, The School Bus, Tyson Quirino, A Quiet Respect, and Pate Hefa. And I can't forget our Pro Hero tier patrons, including the one and only Gilgamesh, Nothing But a Fan, Jason Wilson, King Zeldris, $50 Beat, Alpha Dio, Anatoly Kazatsky, Angel Cruz, Team Sparky65, Cricket XP, Rohan Kapoor, Jessica Maloney, Emperor Otaku, Timothy E. Vargas, Jean Dark, Joe Stanton, JCC Waka, Very Gucci, and Jessica K. Lafont. If you enjoy our videos and you think that they provide value for you, consider supporting us on Patreon. Even a single $1 will give you access to our patron exclusive Discord, and your name will appear in our videos along with these legendary people. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys.